wild geese that fly with the moon on their wings. These are a few of my favorite things.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Mickey, Aurora, and from me. Well, today we have what I hope you are going to find interesting. It's Style Forever has written in asking, and I am going to go along with it. Style Forever says, Lady C, you're always asking us to expand the horizons. I have an idea for you. Can you please do a video exclusively on some of the questions floating around about Harry and Meghan? I'm sure many of your subscribers would enjoy it as much as I would. If you're up for it, here are a few of the questions I'd love you to comment on. And there are quite a few, so here goes. Do you think Meghan loves Harry? I think Meghan absolutely worshipped at the altar of everything she thought Harry embodied and was going to be able to bring her. My therapist used to say, which I did not agree with incidentally, there is no such thing as love. There are only proofs of love. I don't agree with that. I never did agree with it, but I certainly understood where he was coming from with it. And many people do not understand the difference between love and proofs of love. Now, you can love somebody and not provide proof of love or the proofs of love, which, unless they are extremely instinctive and intuitive, they may miss that the message of love. And I'm not speaking about people who are selfish, by the way. Now, I know of another couple, not only Harry and Meghan, I know of several couples, but an absolute perfect example is an adventuress who managed to ensnare a certain lord, and he knows what he's bought and keeps her on a very tight financial lead, but he is very happy with her because she gives him endless proofs of love. But he's not dumb enough to believe that that's love. He knows on some atavistic level that it's opportunism, but she gives expressions of love, proofs of love. Nobody does devotion better than she does. Nobody does self-abnegation better than she does. In fact, Meghan could take a few lessons from her because she is the most perfect phony that exists. You have to admire somebody who is so accomplished at the art of deception, and I do admire her skill. Meghan certainly has enough skill to have duped Harry. Less so, but still, don't believe he's not hooked. He's hooked. He may always be hooked, and even should he escape on some level, he will still be up to a point hooked. That's the nature of love. But does she love him? I think she loved the fact that he was going to give her the keys to the magic kingdom, and she would be able to indulge her fantasy of being Shira, rebel princess, and she would be getting the admiration of the world as she was kicking over the very traces of the thing that she lusted after, wanted, and knew would last intact for as long as she needs to milk it. I think it's called, in the vernacular, biting the hand that feeds you. She understood Harry was the greatest opportunity she could ever have for advancement in life. He would provide her with a great platform, a great role. Like Blake Lively, Meghan is an ambitious schemer whose eyes are bigger than her stomach, if I can put it that way. She doesn't only want to star and be the star. She wants to be the director, the producer, the co-author. She wants to interfere with the creative process without being creative. It's called being a leech. It's called being an opportunist. It's called being a succubus. I do not think Meghan Markle is capable of loving any human being. I think she's very capable of projecting love as and when she thinks it suits her, and for the duration that she thinks it suits her. I mean, she did it with her father for 36 years. Now, that takes durability. And she will do it with other people for the length of time that she is, well, let's put it this way, that the tick is getting the blood that it needs to fatten itself. So, does that answer the question? I hope it does. 2, what about Harry loving Meghan? Undoubtedly, he loved her. Undoubtedly, he still loves her. He may now be seeing through her. He may now at times rebel against her. But when things are good, in a typical narcissistic relationship, the submissive defers to the dominatrix, and they are often trapped in the moment, and they wallow in the moment, and they often do not have the ability to see beyond the moment. That is how narcissists trap a certain type of vulnerable individual, which Harry was. The fact that he's also a nasty, vulnerable individual doesn't alter the fact he's a vulnerable individual. But I think he did genuinely love her, and I think he still genuinely loves her. I think the love has been, shall we say, plumped out with more negative stuff. But I am not one of those people who has ever said, I think it is inevitable that they will get divorced. I think it's inevitable that she will lead him a merry dance, but I don't think it's inevitable that they will get a divorce. If Jeff Bezos tomorrow said, Lauren, goodbye, I want Megsy baby, she would be on that boat, I think, quicker than you could say boo. Maybe I'm doing her an injustice. But I am only going off what her conduct tells me is the reasonable conclusion that I should be arriving at. But him, yes, I think he loved her. I think he did, and I think he does. 3, in one of his podcasts, Dan Wooten had a witness to how Meghan ignored Archie on a flight to South Africa. What are you hearing about the relationship between Meghan and Harry's son? Like the way you put that. I approve. Yes. I'm not sure what to believe. Let me put it that way. But the stories that are emanating from Montecito, from people who have observed them, some of whom I know and who live locally, others of whom have worked for them, others of whom have simply crossed paths with them. She seems to prefer Lily to Archie. Of course, Meg's baby has always been a girly girl. Well, I suppose being the femme fatale and, always having to pose and be a very grande horizontale in terms of geisha-like dishing up becomes very taxing. And it's been my experience that women like that actually don't really like men and certainly don't like the thing that they lead men to believe they absolutely love and that blows men's brains. I've seen it time and again. I even saw it with my parents. My father firmly believed that he was one half of a hot couple. Well, you should have heard what my mother said to my sisters and me about what a woman has to endure to keep a man happy. And we used to point out to her, to us it wasn't a sacrifice, but to her it was. And I have somebody who has whispered in my ear that he thinks that Meghan is a lot cooler about a lot of things than she lets on to men whom she wishes to captivate. And it's only afterwards that you think, oh, actually, that was much ado about nothing. Oh, that doesn't ring true. Why? The guy says, why didn't I spot that at the time? Because the orchestra was playing too loudly and they liked the music that they were hearing. It's only afterwards that they think, hang on a second. The score was set for a lower pitch. It wasn't supposed to be quite so loud. There was something wrong with the rendition. But at the time, you're caught up in the moment, the music wafts you off, if you get my analogy, and you think, you might think, the music's really loud, but you don't think the music shouldn't be that loud because you love the fact that the music's so loud. It's only afterwards that you think, that didn't quite add up. If you can see, I'm interpreting what I've been told, or relaying what I've been told might be a more accurate way of putting it. What Dan discovered and the information he was told by that flight attendant about the way Meghan ignored Archie and just left it up to the nanny. Very much the sort of thing my mother would have done. Very much. Very much the sort of thing that mothers who use their children as props would do. When I look back on it, my mother was totally unempathetic with all of us, including me, who when I was growing up was supposed to be the golden child. It was, looking back on it, all about setting up the situation for me to give her. And occasionally there would be the odd crumb thrown in my direction, but I was trained to be the loving one. My brother and my two sisters totally ignored, totally, while we were growing up, or then mistreated when one brother and one sister. It's par for the course with narcissistic families. And it doesn't surprise me that the stewardess gave Dan that account, because it's resonant with me and with many people who have endured narcissistic mothers. Do you believe the indications that Lilibet is the favoured child? Well, such knowledge as I possess in that regard, and I have to say it's very sketchy, and it's no great deal of knowledge, but such knowledge as I have been told, on the one hand, that's not in the public domain, and then what I have been seeing with my own two eyes, leads me to believe that Lily has turned out to be a more agreeable helpmeet for Meghan, and therefore she is cast in the role of favoured child. But the favoured child, I'm here to tell you, having been one, as I pointed out to my siblings on one occasion, when they were trying to make out how lucky I was, because I didn't get a lot of the brutality that they were subjected to when we were growing up. I said, yeah, but you didn't have to put up with all of the poison being dripped in your air every single day. Your Aunt Juliet this, your Aunt Doris that, your Aunt Marjorie the other, blah, 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 blah. A constant dumping ground. And I had to take it. So the favoured child, let me tell you, pays a heavy price as well. So whichever one of those children becomes the favoured child is going to pay a heavy price. It's simply a different price from the price that the scapegoated child or children, depending on the size of the family, will pay. And in some ways, it's a lesser price to pay. And it's certainly a less damaging price to pay on many levels. But on some levels, it's also a damaging price to pay. But then, in life, everything has a price. So one doesn't want to wallow in self-pity. Let's put it that way. I certainly have none. Number 5. What were the late Queen's true feelings towards Meghan? Before the marriage, during her time as a working royal, and after Megxit? That's 3 questions in one, and you've asked so many other questions as well. Thank you for them, by the way. They're really good questions. My understanding is that the Queen hoped that all the information about Meghan that pointed to Meghan being a very poor fit and basically inappropriate for the role would turn out to be wrong once she was given the chance. But I think the Queen, had she not been threatened with racism, might well have said, I don't think this is the way to proceed. But when Prince Philip tried to say, this is not the way to proceed, they were both shut down. So she was a very phlegmatic and pragmatic person, and she simply moved into a different gear, which was acceptance. And she could never have imagined, I don't think anybody in their right mind could have imagined, the arrogance, the malevolence, the total lack of respect, the total lack of regard and understanding for what Meghan was receiving, and that her egotism was so great that she would kick over every trace to satisfy her monumental and destructive ego and ambitions. So I think before the marriage, she thought this is not a great idea, but had to put a good face upon it. Well, I'm not even sure she put a good face upon it, because if you look at her face during that wedding, she had a face like thunder. So she was actually completely unguardedly showing the world that this was not a situation she was comfortable with or happy with, but she was going to endure it stoically. Prince Philip's expression wasn't much better either. He had a less expressive face than she did, but look at his face. Definitely, there's nothing about, there's no hope there. There's no expectation of anything positive. There's gritting the teeth, and I do think, though, that there might have been no hope in their facial expression, but I think there was hope in their heart that with the passage of time, that Meghan would actually grow into the role and develop as a different person from that which they had been told she was, and that they had seen for themselves that she was. During her time as a working royal, well, it started very badly, because the Queen asked Meghan, I think it was to go up to Leicester on the royal train and do the one engagement that they did together. And Angela Kelly told Meghan what was required, including a hat. Meghan's attitude was, you're not going to tell me what to do. Who the hell do you think you are? And that broken down old woman, I mean, she's not going to tell me to wear a hat when I've got special extensions that I'm going to show instead. Also, Meghan wore an outfit that was not suitable from a foreign designer, because royals on duty are supposed to wear are supposed to wear local designers, in much the same way that Jackie Kennedy, when she was First Lady, Jack Kennedy put his foot down and said, no, you cannot wear foreign designers. You have to wear American designers. So she had Oleg Cassini design for her, and she also had knockoffs done of Chanel, etc. That Chanel suit, when Jack Kennedy was shot in Dallas, that's not a Chanel suit, that's a knockoff of a Chanel suit, but it's an American knockoff of a Chanel suit. So it's perfectly standard that people in positions of some eminence encourage their local designers. It's accepted all over the world. Of course, if you're going to be visiting Paris, you would wear, say, a Givenchy or a Saint Laurent. If you were going to be in the United States, you would have worn an Arnold Scarsi or a Norman Norell that's to honor, but otherwise you wear your nation's designers. Meghan didn't. She showed her contempt right up front. It went down like a lead balloon. But the Queen was a practiced diplomat. The Queen was also used to tricky families. She was used to reconciling opposites within her own family. And so she simply trucked along, being as pleasant as she could possibly be. But she saw what she was dealing with. After Megxit, I understand that she spat bricks over Meghan announcing that she didn't own the word royal. And she was extremely upset about the Oprah interview. And had she lived, she would have been even more upset about the Netflix series and Harry's book. But her true feelings, well, I was told, she said, Meghan was a wicked, wicked girl. And I believe that that was her true opinion of Meghan. I think in fact, I know she ended up deploring everything Meghan represented. She also lost all respect for Harry. She had had a lot of affection for Harry. She still had a residue of affection for Harry. But she was bitterly disappointed with Harry. But she knew that Harry was damaged goods, deeply flawed, very troubled. And, you do not expect an imbecile to understand quantum physics. And she took that attitude where Harry was concerned. Let's leave it at that. 6. What were Prince Philip's true feelings towards Meghan? He thought she was, well, I'm not sure I can say it for legal reasons. He thought she was an adventuress, and skirting my way around what he really thought, because when he said to Harry, one steps out with actresses, one doesn't marry them, he wasn't saying that you wouldn't marry an actress like Grace Kelly or Princess Ira von Furstenberg. He wasn't saying that. He was saying you don't marry the type of actress that Meghan Markle is. He deplored her. He thought she was dreadful. He thought she was an adventuress. He thought that she was opportunistic, calculating, and he saw through her from the word go. He'd seen women of that ilk all his life, at close quarters and at a distance. Meghan was very easy to spot, and people spotted her. The Queen didn't spot her because initially, the Queen didn't spot her, nor did the then Prince Charles. Princess Anne spotted her pronto. Prince Philip immediately. As he saw Meghan sashaying, he thought, got your number. William and Catherine, from the word go. So I hope that answers the question. I've expanded it, sorry. 7. What were Prince Philip and the Queen disappointed in Harry? Well, I've answered that already. Bitterly. They never had great expectations of Harry, but they did think that Harry was actually troubled, but basically a good egg. And they came away thinking Harry was a rotten egg. So, bitterly disappointed. Bitterly. 8. Did the Queen rarely meet Archie and Lilibet? Yes, she did meet Archie and Lilibet. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I checked at the highest level at the palace to be sure that she had indeed met them, and she did, glancingly. She had no real relationship of any note with either of those children. She only clapped eyes on Lilibet on one occasion. She clapped eyes on Archie on 2 or 3 occasions, but she had no real relationship with either of those children. And once the whole business of the lies that were told by Meghan and Harry surrounding Archie's birth and all the speculation that ensued thereafter, and that she was then informed had been ensuing before, she made sure that she limited all contact with Archie and then Lily. She wanted to put up Chinese walls, I think is the expression, Chinese walls, really to protect herself and the royal family against what possible scenario could develop thereafter. Why didn't the Queen and Prince Philip attend Archie's christening? Oh, well, I've just answered that. Sorry. I'm jumping the gun. There was no way either of them was going to attend the christening. There were too many untoward stories circulating, and too many doubts, and too much mystery, and too many red herrings for her to endow that occasion with her presence. But she was a great diplomat, and she was also very canny, and she did not involve the rest of the family in her concerns. She kept them to herself initially. That's been my information. Is it right? Is it wrong? Who knows? But that's been my information. She was watching and waiting and was making sure she was not going to be suckered in by being sucked in. So, 10. Is it true that Harry and Meghan were angling for a royal christening for Lilibet? And if so, why didn't it come to fruition? There was no possibility of it coming to fruition. First of all, they had left the family and they had behaved in the most appalling way, and their behavior had been so reprehensible. And this was after the Oprah interview, where, let's remember, they had accused the royal family and the British people of racism and many other things as well. There was no way that child was ever going to be allowed to be christened, aside from the doubts about its arrival and all the mystery surrounding its arrival, and the speculation that surrounded its arrival as well. There was no way that child was going to be allowed to be christened and to have a royal christening. And so the reasons were many. It was not one reason, it was several different reasons. One being, why reward Harry and Meghan after their treachery with a royal christening? Number two, why condone the christening of a child when this is now the second child that has arrived where there are mysteries with regard to the delivery? Because let's remember, and Archie's christening came pretty quickly on the heel of his birth. Lily's didn't. Lily's came after quite a long gap. And let's remember also, the palace announcement said that a child had been born for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, not to the Duchess of Sussex. So let's leave it at that for the moment. Eleven. Do you believe that the royal family is truly concerned about the speculation about the children's births? Yes. They are very mindful of the fact, I am informed, that this is an extremely hot potato and it is an extremely delicate subject, and it has the possibility of tremendous political ramifications which could backfire significantly upon the monarchy and within the Commonwealth as well. There are so many angles and aspects to this situation that they, yes, of course, they are extremely concerned. And, you know, there are times in life when you die, you don't, you die. So if you're going to die one way or the other, you may as well do nothing and hope that a third alternative comes up, which they would, I imagine, hope that a third alternative will come up, and maybe a third alternative will arise out of this completely messy situation, all of which is totally uncalled for. Because, as I have said time and again, and I'm going to repeat it, Harry and Meghan can clear up all of these mysteries very simply. Just begin finally to fulfill the protocols of all other royal births. Just prove to the world, and do it in a meaningful way and not in twerking with what appears to be pillows front and back, or I should say padding front and back. 12. Do you think the speculation is damaging to the royal family? Yes, I do. I do. I think it's an extremely discomforting position for all parties concerned. And I think it could be easily cleared up, as I've said. And the fact that it is not being cleared up at all tells you how potentially destructive that situation is, and how easily, if somebody has lobbed an atomic bomb in your drawing room, and you know that you can set it off inadvertently, you are going to be very careful to call in the experts and when they are called in and they say, well, there's no guarantee that it's not going to blow all of us to smithereens, what are you going to say at that point? Well, let's, it's spoiling the Louis XV furniture. It's interfering with the flow of the room. Let's put it in any event. And if we are all blown to smithereens, so be it. That's not what. That's not a valid choice. That's not what any reasonable, rational, sensible person would do. And it's certainly not what any responsible head of state would do, or the advisors attached to the monarchy would do. "13. Do you think Meghan and Harry have damaged the royal family in the eyes of the world, and if so, how?" I think the speculation is damaging, but I think it's damaging only insofar as people don't understand that the royal family function within a law-abiding system with certain protocols, and they have responsibilities to various nations, and that they cannot palliate a small but vociferous segment of the population when the possibility, if not likelihood, exists that a larger percentage of the population is either indifferent to or ignorant of the issues at hand. There's that to consider. Putting that aside, Harry and Meghan's behavior generally has shone a light on how well behaved and how dutiful the rest of the family is. So they have also made people more interested in the royal family generally, because the royal family going about its duties would not naturally attract the degree of attention that they are all attracting as a result of the Harry and Meghan mess. So it swings and roundabouts. On the one hand, there are elements that detract from the royal family, but there are other elements which actually enhance the public perception of the royal family. And I think, by and large, balancing the pros and the cons, the pros actually exceed the cons. And I am pretty sure that's also the view taken at the palace. There are times in life when the best thing to do is do nothing. In the 12-step program, it used to say, when in doubt, don't do anything. That's age-old wisdom. And certainly don't be forced into activity that you might end up regretting. Far better to wait till the wave washes up on the shore, and by then you have prepared your defenses, and you are not seen to have been the trigger. "14. Why do you think Meghan targeted Catherine?" Oh, I think that's easy. Jealousy, competitiveness, but even more fundamentally, Meghan understood from very early on that Harry was very malleable, very vulnerable, and could be easily sucked into her orbit with a totality that would give her license to exploit him and the royal situation to its full potential where she was concerned. She also understood that Catherine is the antithesis of Meghan, and Harry absolutely adored Catherine, and she understood that unless she lessened Harry's regard for Catherine by turning Catherine into an enemy, I should say an adversary, rather than initially an enemy, an adversary. She needed to switch Catherine from being the adored sister-in-law to somebody with whom Harry had to be suspect. Harry had to be suspicious of her. Meghan had to loosen the ties between Catherine and Harry to prevail, because she quickly realized that she got both Catherine and William's backs up. And if she did not find a way of negating the hold they had over Harry and loosening the bonds and the links that existed between Harry and them, that she would ultimately be cast out, because she understood very early on that oil and water can't mix, and she is oil, and she intended to burn a big hole through that patch, and she did. So I think she was very shrewd and very calculating and very clever and very foxy. Sorry. And she saw exactly what the danger was and set about not only minimizing it, but completely erasing it. And she succeeded. You could say it's a pity, and it's a pity that she didn't take another view. She couldn't take another view, because to take another view would have meant that she was not Meghan Markle. Ace operator, calculator, manipulator, hustler. Oil and water. Let's leave it at that. Do you think there is room for reconciliation? No, I don't. My understanding is there isn't, and William and Catherine are quite right to feel that there isn't. I reconciled with my mother, largely because of my children, because I thought they needed grandparents. And looking back on it, I don't regret having done it. But I also know that I gave my mother another opportunity to betray me. And she did. And she did. Of course, that time she didn't only betray me, she betrayed my sisters as well. Because she tried to seize money that had been left for us. So, would she, I think, I don't regret having reconciled with Mummy. I don't regret having been a good daughter to a bad mother. I do, however, regret having dropped my guard sufficiently for her to betray me yet again. I should have seen what was coming. I should have seen that a leopard never changes its spots. But I could never have imagined in a month of Sundays, any more than the late Queen could have imagined, that Meghan would do what she did. I could never have imagined that my mother would go into her sister's room and search high and low to find the will, to steal it so that she could then say, oh, well, your aunt didn't leave a will. That means the money's mine. I could never have imagined it. And you'd have had to be as bad as Mummy was to imagine that any human being could do something like this. And this was the advantage Meghan had where the Queen was concerned, because the Queen could not imagine that Meghan would do any of the things she did. If you are a decent person, you really just cannot imagine, no matter how hard you try, no matter how much you have been abused, there is a line over which you cannot stray, because you are not evil. It's about evil. 15. Do you think it's credible that Meghan secretly hoped to end up with William? Meghan, I think, is so ambitious and so self-centered and so rarely Eve Harrington that I wouldn't put anything past her. And Harry said she's capable of anything. So I wouldn't put anything past her. But that is not something that I would have thought in the normal course of life. But I can see, since it has been mooted, where Meghan could actually have thought, that's a hat trick that I might be able to pull off. Whether she would have done it or not is not even a moot question, because there was no possibility. William saw her for what she was from the word go, and made absolutely sure that he was never left alone with her for 1 second in any room, anywhere whatsoever. Why? There are many explanations, but that interpretation could be one of them. Do you think Meghan is a dark triad personality, going off all that I have seen of her, and now seeing her on podcasts like the one with that girl Emma Grady, and what's the other one? Jamie Kern-Lima! I think that her facial expressions are so contorted, they are so revelatory, they are so chilling once you realize what is going on behind the facade. I think there is ample evidence provided by her as a result of her behavior to come to that conclusion. And we will end with the final question, number 17, which is, do you think Harry is Meghan's victim or her accomplice? I think Harry started out as Meghan's victim, and Harry was delighted to join her as her accomplice, because I think water sought its own level, and it has been a joyous, if joyless, experience for Harry to have discovered that he has met his soul mate. But He is her victim. And let's remember, Patty Hearst was abducted. Harry went voluntarily. Stockholm Syndrome works as a valid excuse only when the initial foray, shall we say, was enforced, where it was forced upon you. If you went voluntarily, that is what is called a Mephistophelian bargain. Remember Dr. Faustus selling his soul to the devil? Dr. Faustus chose to do it. That's not Stockholm Syndrome. That is a Mephistophelian bargain. Harry chose to go with Meghan. He's thrilled to the ruthlessness of it all, and to the lack of boundaries, and to the endless possibilities, and the excitement that is generated by rampant, chaotic destructiveness. He is thrilled to it. This released him. He's her victim, but he is also very much her accomplice. The two things are not incompatible, and they are the living embodiment of a wealth of lessons that it behooves all of us to learn from. And on that note, I'll say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what ground you would like us to be covering. Thank you. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and Godspeed. Bye-bye.